Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's super nice to be so warmly welcome to the EA. I see a lot of friends and partners in job, and Maggio, a lot of people, so it's very excited, and I'm very much happy to be here. I hope that it will be easy to understand me, even if I will do some mistake. But my presentation today is titled Play with Grounds, which seeks to articulate our perspective and experience in building public spaces as a dynamic venue for play, well-being, and leisure. Space that at the human scale of observation can create and generate a pattern capable of encouraging and welcoming the most plural human expressions, both in the individual and collective forms. Let's say that I will do this presentation maybe a little bit boring, even it's called the play, so it's play, but it's a little bit boring. In the first part will be a little bit theoretical. I really believe, and I deeply believe, that public space is realized through improvisation mostly, as a void, mostly public space, is made by improvisation. Sometimes you think that public works or public urban design is made by a program, but I don't really believe that. I think it's more made out of improvisation is shaped by a complete yet unfinished process. I'm also very happy to be here because it's a moment to be part of a conversation, a debate in contemporary architecture. I will focus in my conversation today, in my lecture, about the role of architect with rather than for institution, associations, group of people involved in the process of building public space as open system, flexible, incomplete, and able to welcome in the unexpected and the improvisation as important resources. Of course, this is not like an easy job for us as architect and urban designer, because it means more effort sometimes, and also, of course, it means to be more involved in a social texture. So the big question at the beginning is how to deal with public space interventions. Of course, conceived as the dangerous and seduction juxtaposing differences that may clash, how to approach public space project, and how to integrate paradox, conflict, ambivalence. So which, of course, let's start saying something that I think is something in common. We decide public space is the framework we have chosen as a professional, but of course it's also our background as an inhabitant, as a citizen, as you. So it would be maybe a good reflection we should have as architect, because this binomial is always is a constant in our life, And we should maybe find a way to define, or to find a way to have a sort of an incomplete answer to this question. We should admit that public space is mostly a complex system, very complex. So if we admit this, we should say that it cannot be possible find only one singular formal solution or design solution for a complex system. Maybe for multiple questions, multiple problems, multiple formal solutions needed, maybe multiple also professionals are needed to solve this. Or rather, there is maybe the necessity to have an architectural solution, a design solution, urban design solution. Mostly for an architectural problem, maybe it is not necessary an architecture. So complexity. We should admit that the public space is a complex system. So if you admit that how to involve or to include in the process of defining a public space this complexity, or sometimes how to be inspired by this complexity. When playfulness, actions, and communities together generate the time and the space for experimenting with new forms of a collective aggregation, those are already visible around us. Sometimes you should just take from the visible part of this kind of processes already acting in public space. So another question would be how to include maybe informal placemaking processes in definition of a public, in a urban design process. Let's say again, maybe I will not answer to the most of the question I will give you. I will do, but maybe we can define the complexity using a word from Alessandro Parisi, a Nobel Prize for Physics in 2021, who said that a complex system, he was studying birds in Roma Termini. So you know the little birds are like flying around and making big shapes. He was studying the little one, how they interact each other, how to do these big shapes. And so but the definition is very easy because at the end he said, a complex system is basically, can be defined as when the sum of the value of the complex system of the system is bigger than the sum of the singular element who are composing the system. Maybe it's not clear, but I can say another time, or maybe using another maybe easier example. If you see an architecture, for example, a building is made out bricks, concrete, windows, floors, energy from people who have done it. But at the end, the building has a bigger value than the singular sum of the singular element who are composing it. Can it make sense for public space in project or architecture in general? I believe yes. Another topic is public space as unfinished project. So if we define public space as an unproductive resource, it's clear, no? You spend a lot of money to maybe investing in public works, etc., but no, maybe the return in terms of economic is not that clear, it's not visible. But of course it creates value, and because of maybe the benefit that he creates. And of course, I want to repeat also that it is realized through a complete but not concluded process. Can architectural design encourage the free transformation of spaces and accommodate the unexpected? If we say that, and we should say also that if we think at a moment, for example, you finish a design project and you have to deliver it. If you think that delivery of the project, it means the final definition of a space, of a place, I think we should fall in a big risk. Because if you think that, the risk is that your project is already outdated from the future transformation of the place. So even if you see after the opening of the building site, for example, there are very clear, immediately improves about like comfort, the space is more comfortable, but just the usage of the space and the time will define the improvement or the decline of the space itself. So part of our work maybe is to define carefully what is relevant today, so to choose carefully what is relevant for the project today, attempt to predict what may happen tomorrow, but more importantly and crucial is that the choices made should not prevent for future transformation. So we should be very careful that what we do should not block future transformation of a place. It means that we need to adjust our attitude as a designer and maybe find new way of like avoid, or at least as much as possible, hierarchical function or hierarchical structure of a space to allow the freest interpretation after. So I want to propose this kind of interpretative approach of designing public spaces, which means to have a sort of a conscious uncertainty in defining spaces and to decide what can be the solution of the spatial solution of a space. So we are constantly invited to find a new way to maybe discover new opportunity in the border of our profession as a designer. The role of architect in urban project is open system. So I don't know if you have any question already. I mean, we can also stop and go if you find it maybe too boring. But the role of architect in urban project is an open system. The ensemble of public space, again, on a urban observation scale, creates a pattern capable of highlighting the most diverse human expressions, both individual and collective. What design tool can be adopted to synergize these resources? So if we consider that the public space is a constant collective activity of addiction and subtraction, so we already admitted the complexity in this. In this system made by spontaneous things, order, organized things, divergences and similarities can just meet or not. They can just clash or merge wonderfully together. So the rule of, in this context, in this complex context, in this sort of a chaotic or order chaos, the role of architect, the architect become a mediator, a sort of a mediator, a guide of this transformation. And if you, for example, we said, no, the architect with and not for. So if you are part of a process, you should just ride the flux. You should just ride the process without to find a way to not interrupting it somehow. So the role of architect is just to find a way to collect, to gather all the hidden resources in this process. Maybe make an order and finding new opportunities, spatial opportunities, for example. Of course, the architect who adopt this philosophy, let's say, should lower the self-defenses as a technical designer, mostly, and be part of the process. So the result of this coordination is a collaborative creation project for the collectivity that admits open influences with the project for the construction of dynamic processes and open system of collaboration, often unexpected. Let's say this is just a boom, I want to say, that this project is called Hollywood, so Santo Hollywood. But the point is that in this, I don't know if I translated what I say, is that the architecture for public space, or the architect, is the role of architect is very similar to a movie director sometimes. And the architecture can be seen as a movie without the film. So it's a movie, but not printed, not imprinted on the film. I want to say that. And yeah, another point is that we need at this point to talk about times of public projects. So what can be the right design solution of the urban project in its different times, and what are its short, medium, and long-term effects? We can... Okay, sorry, I lost my... Just a second. Oh, no. Yeah, just a few pages. Okay, can continue without. Times of public project. what can be the right design? So we can define 3 times in public project. Time 1, temporary architecture, here and now. Time 2, incremental project, tactical urbanism. Time 3, infrastructure, large-scale urban interventions. Where is my time? Okay, time 1. So this is the time for little objects, so little devices to occupy and reclaim public spaces. We see also the opportunity to unlock little situation or to reclaim for little changing in the space. But also it's the time for ephemeral structure for building for public programs, so to gather together people around the topic, for example. Maybe this is the time, for example, related mostly with architectural festival or bottom-up artistic program, or again, inhabiting the meantime with collective activities. So the time 2 is experimental spaces to grow together. So if we have more time, so it's the same. We can use the same tools as temporary architecture, but with a longer time. If who loses time gains space, say Francesco Carrelli from Starker. And it's, I think, very important, because if you have more time, you can correct or modify your behaviors, for example. You can correct or take on time decision for the project, and etc. But more important is to have the space to build trust and collaboration. This is Joe. Nice, Joe. And yeah, Joe. Yeah, this is a really very important project I will show up after. And so, but in the time 2, again, this kind of intervention can be an important observatory to test long-term urban transformations. So you have time, you have the capacity of interact daily, also the request, and say, and see what can be could be the future transformation of a space. Time 3. Of course, the time 3, we jump to another dimension. We said the urban scale intervention, infrastructure. But I really believe that temporality or temporary architecture has is a value that goes, is a bigger value than the connotation of the short term of the intervention. So we can come to the infrastructure. Sometimes the order of the times are not related to the number. So it's not that important if the time 3 comes after the others, but anyway, solid infrastructure and social incubator. It means that this kind of interventions, like big intervention, this is not big, this is a sort of a little infrastructure, but in general, you have to imagine a public works. Public works are extremely important because are very big occasion to change in different level. You can consider the infrastructure, so this kind of intervention, public infrastructure, as a social incubator. It means that, for example, this kind of intervention can happen in part of the city where there is more space, so maybe outside the city, but the same, there is more space, but there are also maybe bigger problems, social problems. So the infrastructure or the public works become an occasion to build a new identity, or to reinforce or to recover the identity of a community, or again to find new models of public works, or to how to work inside the public works, inside the rules of public works, which are at the moment quite restrictive. So we jump now to the sort of a fast carousel or fast slideshow about our project. But I want to title this building site because it's very important to me. Because it means inhabiting the space while the space is built. Building and inhabiting it is part of the same it makes a lot of value for also in terms of relational, personal, interpersonal relation between the people who are invited or in taking part of the building site, for example. But it's also a moment to build a new affection to the project. And also, as I said before, This is important because you have time inside the building site to modify your behaviors during the building site and maybe make corrections. I want to also say, because play is a serious matter, I said, as you can see. But let's go to the Proxima Apertura, which is the first intervention I want to show. This is our only big public works we did in 2021, but it came from a competition we won in 2016. The translation from Italian to English of Proxima Apertura is next opening. Next opening means, in our idea, in our competition proposal, was to work a lot on these boundaries of the public works. We worked a lot inside the rules of having the time for experimenting a new forms of gathering together with the community, and so using the possibility to use the building site as a laboratory of building the space. So we defined the building site in different times. The first part of the site was built was this square. Of course, we had a lot of meetings, and also the team, the project team was not just made by architects, but also artists in communication and photography, but also psychologists, social psychologists. It's important to say that this kind of project just remain. I mean, we keep on talking with these people. We now are in the second stage of the project. But as I said before, the first part of the project we did is the big square. Of course, forgive us if we use so much concrete, but it was sort of a dealing with the contractor at the end. It's always also part of the work. It was bad. We asked for blocks that should be removed and maybe allowed planting after, but this was a mistake, honestly. But this big square at the bottom, so this big square for events, was the temporary laboratory where we used to build also temporary architecture with the community, like a big table or the path in the OASI. And then, of course, the building site went a little bit fast because it was during COVID, when all the building sites were very fast in the process. So we should also adapt ourselves, our program in activities, temporary activities, with the normal time of the building site. But at the end, this also is a little square on top. It's a more human scale infrastructure with a big table for focus group. This is another project called Cittadella, which means little city, I don't know. It's a very different project because it is part of a residency, an artistic residency we did in 2023, I remember. I did also this project with Joe, so it's very nice to have him here. So we were invited to occupy this big space, a big void in Germany, in Bielefeld. It was a Royal Army barrack. They just left the barrack a year before we arrived. And the whole place was bought by the municipality of Bielefeld, who wants to open this publification process. And so the first event was to ask for an architectural festival, an art festival, to occupy the space and to propose a new usage of the space. So we decided to call it Cittadella because we actually went the first inhabitants of the space after almost 200 years, which was just a military base before Nazi and then Royal Army, so British. So we occupy the space with little infrastructure for mostly live there. So we built our own shower, we built our own kitchen, we occupy the Mensa. We started building this infrastructure to host public activity, because during our residency, which was made by an international team, we invited to come. But during the day of construction, the site was also open to public, so it was always open. We also collaborated with the theater group with mental problem. It was super nice because the building site became a theater stage. It was super cool. At the end, we built the project in 3 weeks, I don't remember, maybe more or less 3 weeks. And it is actually a place ready to be used now, even if still the progress of the publication of the space is still an ongoing process. So now at the end was like this, like a place for hosting public activity. Another project is smallest and older, is Iceberg. I wanted to show this because it's working more on another stage of our work, which is more related to the narrative. So Iceberg, because we actually build a sort of the shape is similar to an iceberg, but the idea was we worked in this space called Piazza Verestrello. Is it in Roma, close to our office? And the meaning of the iceberg was just because we tried to find a way to communicate in an easy way what we wanted to say, which was we are talking about just the tip of the iceberg. So we built the tip of the iceberg because what we were organizing mostly was a sort of a program with a lot of participants around. So we built a table for focus group talking about the progress and the future of the space. And this is also another project that is still ongoing. We are working on this every year. Another project is Simulate Singulis. I decided to build a very different collage of projects. Simulate Singulis is a project in Cologne, in Köln, Germany. Another time is a festival who gave us the opportunity to experiment. We decided to work inside these 3 arches under the railway of Köln. This place has been abandoned and waiting for a new use for 20 years. And what we decided to do is mostly to build an infrastructure to allow people to use this space easily, and also after our residency. So we decided to work on the floor. So we built all the floors in concrete and wood, and we also built this little architecture we call it Giotto architecture. You know, in the portrait of Giotto, there are all these little machines or little architecture inside bigger architecture. So we decided to build inside devices that can be used for activities related to the festival. In this case, it's an arch, a theater, a mobile theater. But also there were a kiosk, a publishing studio, and an office. Another scale of intervention is also another scale of public work intervention is Piazza Fabrizio De André in Riesi, Sicily, South Italy. We wanted to demonstrate how it can be possible to use, even if with a few economical resources, how we can see very tangible the change. How it can be easy maybe to change a parking lot like this in a place playful and able to host a multiple possibility of usage of the space. I mean, what we did was just to design few furniture, but the important thing here are not the furniture themselves, but the space between the object. We also designed this first idea of a graphic, which really badly realized, honestly. But the idea was that it was just like a a blackboard. So the second step, the second stage of the work would be to define another graphics, so other activities on it. I can also relate this to what Van Eyck said about the grammar of number. I don't know if you know. So if you, another type of or strategy to make a place not hierarchical is to avoid the possibility to have a balance or a symmetry in the space. So there is no center, there is no a function, specific function. So the graphic just want to avoid this perception of having a center or having a particular function more than others. Void of interest, or vuoti di interesse, is the third chapter of the project I do with my students at the University of L'Aquila. It's still another kind of example how it can be with a small budget. We did a small square. So we occupied the place with this just graphic on the ground, and then just after it was removed. Here we are, Casa di Belmondo. Casa di Belmondo is a very important project for me. I also have to say this was one of my laboratory as architect, let's say. It was like the concept of domestic building site came from this. It's a still ongoing project, also if now the stage of the project is another scale, it's like a building intervention inside. We have to organize a new program for the activity inside. We have sort of build again the community around the house and the project, which was very powerful and important for all of us who took part of this. So Casa di Belmondo, I will explain just what we did at the beginning. It's a part of the project of Belmondo, led by la Rivoluzione delle Sepe in collaboration with the Metropolitan University of London. We basically occupy this abandoned space house of Belmonte Calabro with temporary activities, not just building, but mostly was at the beginning was building our own space, so starting building the floor, starting building furniture. At the end, the house was full habitable, let's say. Fluss is another project in Graz, in Austria, and this was a playful way to invite people to interact with the Fluss, with the river. So we designed and built a sign landmark in the middle of this harbor with an interactive object that can also help people to reach the island in the middle. So sometimes, yes, this is also an example of how it is important to just remark a place that is already there. I mean, this was the part of the project, so we just did a little intervention, just remark the potential of a space. Gondwana, I don't know, I put it in this selection, but this is one of our first intervention. It was a stage for a festival in 2011. So we did this project, we were asked with few economies, but this is not that important, but we did a stage for the festival, but also we tried to experiment for the first time a sort of interaction with our structure in public space. So the structure could be modified depending from the use of the people. Another project is 8.5 in Rome. This was in 2014. This was our interpretation of the nature of public space. This one wanted to interpret our research on public space. So we defined, this was a competition, YAP, Young Architect Program, promoted by Maxi Museum and PS1 MoMA New York. We proposed for the competition this infrastructure, so it's a theater. But it's a theater, but it wants to interpret the nature of the double nature of public space activities, the informal ones, so the spontaneous, and the organized event. So this facade, this facade is a LED landmark, so it's a light landmark, and want to just encourage for organized event. But the back of the structure, where you can find maybe a little square, you can find more like spontaneous activities or little event or concert. Again, UUT Units, another example how to invite people to interact with the public space intervention. We use this another time display. We played with the name of the intervention. So UUT Units is a sort of the office of the urbανauts who are invited to discover the place while it's made. But basically, it's a little infrastructure to host community activity with devices, mobile devices, who can help the people to go around. Sexy Assemblage is the last project I will show, likely for you. It's our proposal for the last architectural biennale in Venice. This is sort of a summary of our research around the idea of how to deal with public spaces. So we wanted to build this space who invited for interaction in the Biennale. It's not like a typical installation you can find in a Biennale, so full of words or text. There are no texts, but the space wanted to invite for interaction in the space. So there was also a ping pong table and a big map, almost finished. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions. Sorry, if I wanted to do like this presentation as a open marks, like question marks. So if you have any question, it would be very nice to open a discussion with you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Such an incredible presentation. Actually, I loved it. I think, yeah, it touched upon so many points that I guess are really relevant currently in the kind of scenario of architecture and design, and yeah, tackling the importance of ethics, let's say. So I was struck by a few of your inputs tonight, but well, the first one is identity. When you started talking about identity, and you said that kind of creating these new models of public works are an opportunity for the community to regain identity and redefine their identity. How? So if you want to expand a little bit on how and who decides these, like, I guess the who is quite important here. And as you said originally, you said the role of the architect is the mediator. So how does the architect come into this or kind of conversation, being a mediator of redefining the identity of a place and of people in that place?
You have to maybe we should divide the place where there is nothing and the place where there is already a big impact of from the people of maybe the community who already made the shape of in some way of the space. So we should also say that who comes first? The shape of the society. So who shapes what? The society shapes the shape of the public space, or is the public space shaping the society? So this is also the point. So if we have the opportunity to work with this greatest value, when is this greatest value made by people, for example, by a greatest community, greatest power, a big identity, for example, there is already an identity. It's very important for the architect, for all the actors involved in the process to be inspired by this, at least, or to be part of it with them, to follow this. I don't have any I mean, all my experience is out of experience. It's not, and so I don't really have a final answer to this. But I guess that we should open to this sort of definition I said about open system, because it very makes sense to have different rules. The architects remain part of the process, who maybe have the role of defining at the end, also the responsibility to define, no? In a way, the space in terms of responsibility. But also, also it's very important to just listen sometimes. As I said, you can all propose your idea of a space, but most dangerous things we can do is to come back in the past, where the architect was the one who decided to be the one, you know, in defining spaces. So I don't know. The point is that we also need to exercise a new attitude of be in the position of the listener, let's say, who listen things. Of course, you are not alone, because if you're alone, you're totally lost. If you work with sociologists, other professionals who can help in translate maybe some conversation. Or sometimes you've also, in my case, we were around the table, but we were just architects talking with people, and then the end was just nothing went out. I mean, just you need sometimes who can translate professionally what you said. No, so it's not just about you. It's not just about architect and the community. No. Sometimes it's a very dangerous. For that, I said play at the end is a serious matter, because actually sometimes you can also maybe be in the position that you think to be good, but at the end you don't really control the situation, and everything jumped out against you. I also went in a position, for example, working in a social, difficult and dangerous social context. For example, in Roma, in San Basilio, for example, we also another occasion together. I mean, it's also very easy to be in a dangerous situation sometimes. No? I don't want to jump to this, but the question was how to do it for real. I don't know. I mean, I said at the beginning, I will not give you any answer, probably. I mean, be together. I mean, to build this open system and be inspired by the situation before to think that you have the right solution.
I actually had a question, if that's okay. You spoke a bit about the potential of space, and I wondered if you could talk a bit about how the things you've built have been used in ways you weren't expecting, and maybe a bit about the risk that's often kind of attached with play and risky play. And I think sometimes that's what makes playing fun, is the potential of that risk. But I was thinking particularly about your Flus project. Mm-hmm. I mean, that looks like it's inviting people to jump in the water and swim. And was that something that they were allowed to do, or do you ever have constraints that maybe from like councils, or how do you negotiate that?
Oh yeah, in Flux particular, they were not allowed to do it, but it's also part of the game. If you reclaim for something, maybe the first one will be, I don't know. It's not it's not our role, no, to invite people to go against rules, but sometimes it works, because it's all about public space. Is all about political risk. Who wants to take this risk? Sometimes is a sort of a hero. But at the beginning of our work, our job, we did a lot of borderline things. At one point, you should maybe admit that you have a responsibility, and so your technician position just not avoid to do something or to say that so clearly. So for example, in Fluss, we were inviting people, but in Fluss is a little bit difficult because the Fluss, the river was not, the people were not allowed to swim in the river, but in the airborne, yes, because part of the project there was to organize the maintenance of the harbor. So we also asked for open a call for maintenance. So there were people renting boats, for example. So the one were also occupying the fact that the safety of the space. So they actually were the possibility to swim there. But for example, one of the pictures I did, we saw at the beginning was this sort of a theater, no, or Hollywood. It was actually not a project because we actually we decided to not occupy the site. We just did the steps on the hill, but the project was in the middle. So the project was just to invite people to show themselves or to organize maybe theater events, but it was not so explicit, you know. That's it. I don't know if maybe Ali. Yes.
Thank you so much for speaking. I was struck by what you said about temporary structures having a longer term impact on the communities they're in. How does that influence your design process?
Sorry.
How does the temporality of the spaces you design, and knowing that even though these things aren't going to last forever, they have a longer term impact on the communities that they serve, how does that factor in your design process?
Temporary architecture is also another thing that you are very sort of free in shaping the structure. So the structure can be not really related with the function or with something. But as I said, sometimes after a temporary architecture, what remains is not the architecture. So you need time and you step in the second stage of architecture, so maybe more incremental project. So where you have more time to, maybe the structure left, but you have time to understand what was sort of a monitoring process, then become a monitoring process, where you can have time to understand if at least your structure opened something. So if you can make another intervention. For example, iceberg is just the third chapter. We did 6. So I just you can understand after this if it also makes sense to do something, you know, because otherwise, as before, you have a responsibility. Of course, you take in charge. You are in charge of this also conversation dealing with public or community. But sometimes you also have to step back and say, okay, my architecture did something. Okay, I can go on, or I can just step back.
I mean, thank you so much for such an incredible presentation. It's really amazing to see the scope of the portfolio of the practice. It's really remarkable, and there's so many things that I kind of want to ask about, but I'll try and narrow it down to one. A few things really stood out, kind of this conversation over what is relevant and how you define the relevance within the work, but also how you build trust. You talked about the time too as building trust of collaboration. And I guess it's this building the trust and the relevance of the project and how you configure those two together when you're working in such different timescales.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm really sorry that I lost some paper. So something is lost in my presentation, but again, okay. And I don't know, building trust. Building trust means that if you, for example, use temporary architecture as a tinder for new things can happen after, you can just justify or make the possibility to the people to gather together again and think, okay, with a sort of a small budget or with a small resources, a light intervention, we did this. okay, we believe more in this transformation, because it's also sometimes, again, a political act. So if you see, for example, Piazza Perestrello, the iceberg, which was part of the time 2, Largo Bartolomeo Perestrello has no name in reality. So it's a place without a name, because even the municipality of Rome don't want to take care about the space. So it's actually people taking care about the space. And we're part of this community because also we are part of the neighborhood. And so we can act in the space. So the fact to demonstrate that something can really happen and also visible and tangible in a short time, it can also help to make more, to believe more and to make new sort of a trust structure around the project. And that's was, I don't know if I will not answer to your question today.
No, I mean, I think that's great, and I guess it leads on to something else I wanted to kind of ask about, but I wasn't going to, but I shall now, which is, do you then assess a project according to the trust that you've built? How does your assessment of a project take place? How do you define yourself, whether this went well or it didn't go great?
I don't know if I got your question again, but the question is if we, at the end, the result of the project was satisfying us. So,
yeah, how at the end of a project you evaluate it for yourself?
Okay, you also have to admit the limits of what you do. So it's, as I said, I'm really maybe too much, but I always take my own defenses and say something. So definitely, so I don't want to say that our interventions are like solutions in general. So it's really difficult to say if something works out or not in temporary architecture. Let's say that's more relevant is what we did, for example, in Proxima Apertura, which more permanent, and what you did has more effect in the true life. But in our temporary architecture, one of the thing is that is temporary. So, okay, I can say maybe that it could be better done, but at the end, it's not that important. The construction is more like the result, and the result is not just depending from the architecture or from architect in general. So let's say no. I can say sometimes I'm not satisfied by the project, but let's say that. I also admit that it's not just depending by me. I sleep well.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. And I guess it's very evident from a lot of your images of your projects and also your design thought. There is this very clear sense of agency given to the people who occupation, right? And then this ambiguity, and then which you put it, you used the word in the beginning, unfinished space or whatever noun you put. So I'm just curious on how you interpret the idea of being unfinished. Do you think that these projects are ever finished? And, yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I think public projects are made through a process that is complete, because you should, if you are, for example, in public works, you as architect, you have to define the screw. I mean, you have to give to the contractor how many screws, how it is made, etc. But if you think that the final definition of a space finished with the delivery of your project, I think it's a big risk. So I think it's more theoretical that when I say that public projects are unfinished processes, because it's not depending from your project or your project. It's part of a big and whole shape. No? So if you admit that your project should host for future transformations, okay, so maybe your project will be able to allow these transformations somehow. So it's more like theoretical when I say that the project is complete but unfinished at the same time. I don't know. Yeah,
well,
I wanted to say.
Suppose, like how you see when, let's say, post-occupation, when that playground and project you did in Sicily, like let's say people came up with ways to draw new lines of how they're going to play in these playground. Do you think that's finished to you, or?
No, this I continue. The project was called Piazze, which means squares. I mean, we did the first step, but then it's an ongoing process, and the people is able to just also adapt to the wheels. I mean, how they can adapt themselves, their habits in public spaces. It's not just about the graphics. I mean, the graphics is just maybe more related to a performative activity, related to pedagogical activities, but then the space will be transformed in the future, I think. It was so easy to transform like it is, then I think they understood that can be different, just changing something. It's not about. So this was
Maybe I take advantage to ask a question. I always wonder, because I am very big fan of your projects, of Orizzontale, but all of them, they resonate with me, perhaps because I'm Italian, I'm from Rome, but they are machines for macchine da festa, which is like a big iconographical reference for us in the south of Italy as well, like party machines, and their play is always associated usually with something celebratory, and even when you also in school, when you play, you expect to have fun. But I'm wondering if we can use play to highlight something that instead is tension, or to highlight a liminal space that perhaps is not so positive, or how do we use play not just as a celebratory device?
You're totally right. I mean, I don't like play. I don't like play in the design process. To say, I'm playing with this. No, I'm designing something and say, I play with this. No, I don't like this. But I titled Play with Grounds because, I don't know, it's also funny to play with words. No? This is funny. I mean, also you said right. I'd also say that at the end, the play is a very serious matter, no? So, okay, play, but it's not about the name or the title of the lecture. But I totally agree with you, Sabrina, that we also need to be celebrative somehow. You also know, of course, meraviglioso urbano. I don't know how to translate it in English, maybe you?
Wonderfully urban.
Urban, I don't know. So in the 60s in Roma, they invented this public program, which is still ongoing during the summer. It's called Estate Romana, which was the first experimentation of temporary activities related to the historical center in Roma. So they did a movie inside the Fori, etc., etc. And this consular at that time invented this word, was meraviglioso urbano, to justify to the people at that age, in the 60s, how it can be helpful to have something wonderful. So how it's also important to be spectacular sometimes, to unlock something. So yes, spectacularity and to be magnifico sometimes helps in this kind of literary intervention, but it doesn't mean that you don't take seriously what you do. It's just a tool, a narrative tool, an additional narrative tool, of course. So it's very important to be meraviglioso sometimes.
This perhaps is a bit more personal, I think, but it has to do with this idea of kind of taking place seriously as well, and kind of bring the focus back to the domestic space that you talked about. How you spoke about, you said it super nicely and beautifully, so being careful not to prevent future transformation. And I guess in the domestic space, this is even more urgent when you're, inhabiting a space to then, well, inhabiting the space while designing it and making it. And actually, I used to visit my dad in construction site when I was young, and sometimes he would live in the construction site for weeks, months, and I would sleep there with them. I would wake up and actually, well, of course, I didn't stay there forever, but a couple of days just to visit. And leaving the construction site, was always so hard. I was a kid, of course, but I'm wondering how hard, first of all, is at what point do you decide to stop, not to prevent future transformation? And then when you decide to leave that domestic space, to say it's no longer mine, and how hard is that? Yeah.
I mean, I can open another, maybe something I lost in my paper, but now I remembered. Thank you. It was another theoretical aspect about domestic building site, which is more related with the word building. If we consider the word building as a verb, as a proactive act that is transform sometimes physical structure in abstraction, and can also help to put at the same level or scale of value the structure of a physical structure of a public space, for example, or the social texture. I mean, we can understand more the idea of inhabiting a building site. It doesn't mean to sleep in a building site. I mean, for example, in Casa di Belmondo, just Joe slept there, but nobody. In Casa di Belmondo,
I thought everyone did.
Like living, sleeping places, at least now, so far. But leaving the building site in these two different contexts, I mean, Casa di Belmondo is something. It's a very open process of building together with no actually design, nothing. Another thing is inhabiting a building site, for example, a temporary architecture or cittadella, where you are in the building site, building together, sleeping together in a tent, etc., are very different. Of course, if you, for example, in cittadella, at one point you have to leave. And this is also a traumatic aspect of your work, because you live there, it's a sort of also a social interpersonal incubator at that moment. So it's not just about the construction within the people inside the buildings, the building team, but also within the people of the building team and the people you meet citizens, for example. When you leave, it's quite traumatic, because of course you know that you need to leave, you should leave. I mean, mostly of the time it's not your city neither. I mean, I will not live in Bielefeld for more than 1 month with Joe. But simply it's more difficult, for example, in Roma. It's a project that you have just beside your studio, and then it's more difficult because you have to act in a sort of a daily dealing with your own neighbors, so it's sort of difficult. But also for example, was the first time we were asked to remove the structure. So it's also part of the construction, or the building the construction, into disassemble it. But yeah, let's say that is inhabiting the building site as an exercise, a personal and interpersonal exercise, is important, but it can be very different depending from the project.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think we could take the conversation outside to the terrace, where we're going to have some drinks from a lovely structure designed by some summer school students earlier today. So please could you just join me in thanking Giuseppe for sharing your work and that of Orizzontale. Thank you.
Music, please.